We're just days away from the Southpaws 10th Anniversary Listener Appreciation Party. The party starts May 21st at 1 and continues until 6. We want to thank everyone who has confirmed that they're coming. And why wouldn't you? Free food and beverages, a live music performance by local artist Rissa Jade, and a special edition of Southpaws recorded live in front of a studio audience for the first time ever. If you want to come, please contact the offices of Big D Entertainment at 616-723-6635. A reminder that all guests are required to wear masks and show proof of COVID vaccination and booster to come in. Unfortunately, we will turn away guests at the door who don't have their vaccination cards. Don't miss out on your chance to party with the Southpaws. It's the Southpaws 10th Anniversary Listener Appreciation Party. Don't miss it. Be there.
For the hardest-hitting show in talk radio, the true progressive voice since 2012. This is Southpaws.
And welcome to Southpaws on the Pacifica Radio Network. We are the leaders of the revolution. My name is Darren Gibson. I'm your co-host.
And my name is Jack Prince, your fellow co-host.
Jack, we've got to talk about a lot of different things today. We're going to talk about the baby formula shortage in this country. Plus, we've reached a milestone with COVID. We have double hammer time this week. Plus, we've got two off-the-cuff stories, one karma story and one very uplifting story. So we'll share those right at the end of the show. Before we get started, a couple of reminders that you can follow us on social media by going to facebook.com/Southpaws Radio Show. You can follow us on Twitter at Southpaws Radio. You can follow us on Tumblr at southpawsradioshow.tumblr.com. You can follow us on YouTube by doing a search for Southpaws Radio. And you can become a patron of the show by going to patreon.com/Southpaws Radio. You can listen to the show anytime at Spreaker, Stitcher, Apple Podcast, or Reason.fm by doing a search for Southpaws. Once you found our logo, you found us. We send links to our weekly episodes to our Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, and YouTube accounts. You can listen to us on Global Community Radio Channel 1 every Saturday night at 11 Eastern. And you can listen to us on great Pacifica stations, including KCEI in Taos, New Mexico, KZGM in Kabul, Missouri, and KEPJ in San Antonio, Texas. So be sure to listen to us there. We have a programming note. Our sister publication, Period End of Story, comes out on May 15th. I will be talking with Kathleen Larson of the Autism Alliance of Michigan. We're going to do what I'm calling Autism 101. So we're going to explain what autism is and a lot of the ancillary things involving autism spectrum disorder. So be sure to check that out. We also have breaking news as we go to air. We are recording this show on Friday the 13th, May 13th, 2022. And it was not a good Friday the 13th for UAE President Sheikh Khalif bin Zayed Al Nahyan, because he passed away this morning. He was 73 years old. That's according to the state news agency WAM. The Ministry of Presidential Affairs announced a 40-day period of mourning. And according to the Constitution, Vice President and Premier Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, who is the ruler of Dubai, will act as president until the Federal Council elects a new president within 30 days. And that is being reported by Reuters. So, yeah, not a very good Friday the 13th for the president of the United Arab Emirates.
Well, remind me when the 40 days are up so I can stop mourning, will you, Darren?
Yeah, exactly. When I die, roll me up in a sheet and throw me in the ground. So
Saran wrap like the guy that's coming up next, right?
That'll be at the end of the show. Oh, all my gosh. Yeah. I'll tell you what we've got coming up next, folks. We might as well just get right into it with the appropriate music.
Stop. Hammer time.
Oh yeah, it's hammer time. It is time to drop the hammer on the douchebag of the week, and we've got 2 winners this week. So anytime we have 2 winners, Wade Garrett's got to chime in.
The double douche.
Who is that guy?
Gentlemen,
Wade Garrett. Holy sh**.
exactly right.
So Wade Garrett presents us with winner number 1 and 2. This is all in the same story. Winner number 1, Representative Jim Clyburn, the House Majority Whip Democrat out of South Carolina. And winner number 2, Representative Henry Cuellar, Democrat of Texas. Why? It all has to do with Roe versus Wade, folks. This comes to us from Patrick Svitek, reporting for the Texas Tribune. This is dated May 4th out of San Antonio. The number 3 Democrat in the U.S. House of Representatives charged into a raging national firestorm over abortion rights Wednesday as he visited Texas to campaign with U.S. Rep. Henry Cuellar, a rare Democrat who opposes the practice in his hotly contested primary runoff. House Majority Whip Jim Clyburn's trip was announced over a week ago, but it fell 2 days after Politico published a leaked draft opinion from the U.S. Supreme Court that favors overturning Roe v. Wade. The timing of the news cast an uncomfortable spotlight on Cuellar and the senior Democrats who support him, as he was the only House Democrat last year to vote against a proposal to codify Roe v. Wade. As Clyburn traveled to Texas on Wednesday morning, Cuellar's progressive challenger, Jessica Cisneros, issued a statement calling on Democratic House leadership to rescind its support for Cuellar in light of the Roe v. Wade bombshell. But Clyburn was unswayed as he attended a series of events across the city with the Laredo congressman, stressing that he does not always agree with Cuellar, but believes divergent views are healthy for democracy. In doing so, Clyburn sent a message that the Democratic Party should not shun abortion opponents. After an evening rally at an outdoor barbecue joint, Clyburn told reporters, quote, "We have a big tent party, and if we're going to be a big tent party, we got to be a big tent party. I don't believe we ought to have a litmus test in the Democratic Party. I think we have to bring as many people into the party as we possibly can. This whole notion that you've got to agree with everybody on everything is pretty sophomoric to me." End of quote. I am so sick and fucking tired of hearing this big tent bullshit. I heard it when I ran WPRR. I am tired of it. I am really sick and tired of it.
Well, the big tent to Claiborne, as with all established Democrats, is to turn your eye on those who suck the heat of the corporate world, and those are embraced under the guise of having a big tent. It doesn't mean a big tent in diversity. They'd like you to think that it is a big tent in that it, thanks to the Clintons, it embraces some progressives, a progressive wing, and a total corporate wing that is as red as the GOP. And he's the guy that cut Bernie's throat, fulfilled the marching orders of the establishment for the Democratic Party, and turned the very, very big Super Tuesday, against Bernie. So a worthy winner of the douchebag.
Yes, and his quote that he doesn't believe that they ought to have a litmus test. No, that's the problem, is that you don't have a litmus test. We do on this show. You're not called a progressive if you're pro-life. You're not called a progressive if you don't believe in single-payer universal health care. It's that simple. Every facet of life has a litmus test. If you go in and apply for a job somewhere, you have to go through a litmus test because the employer has certain requirements that you need to fulfill, like being able to lift a certain amount of weight, or you're not going to get hired. That is a litmus test in and of itself. We don't call it that, but that's what it is.
Yeah, listening to Clyburn speak, he has this attitude. There's some wonderful black speakers historically. I don't know, when I listen to it's like frying bacon with a shirt off, just to listen to this guy. And to me, the black voice now, whether it's in Grand Rapids or in the southeast of this nation, is an establishment Democratic voice. And you're right about the big tent bullcrap. You know, they have these monikers for things that have a dual meaning. And the meaning he has and the actual meaning are far, far apart.
The Big Ten he's talking about is the one that the Democrats fill with corporate money. That's
exactly
all they use it for. Really, It is.
Yeah.
Let me continue the story here. Addressing a crowd of about 80 people from the stage of his campaign rally, Clyburn hailed Cuellar for his role as a chief deputy whip, saying together that they have been, quote, very effective in getting Joe Biden's agenda across the finish line, end of quote. He joked that he does not always agree with Cuellar, just like he did not always agree with his late wife of 58 years. But he said people do not grow if they speak only with those they agree with. Clyburn said, quote, we have to sit down with people with whom we do not agree and try to find common ground so that you do what is necessary to continue moving this country forward, end of quote. Yeah,
I've not seen a Republican sit down willing to lay any of their ground on any table. Never, I haven't seen it. This whole negotiation crap is absurd.
Common ground, reach across the aisle. It's all horse.
It's total.
Yep, it definitely is. Yeah,
and we've got one right here in this town where people, say, "Hey, listen, let's negotiate." Some of my progressive friends don't stand strong against Russia. You may piss off the big bear. So what you have to do is you have to sit down and negotiate. There's no negotiation out of Russia. There's no negotiation out of the red right here in this country. There's none. Absolutely nothing.
You can't,
and once they get close to you, that's to them a victory. You open up this imaginary tent door and let them in. Watch out.
Yeah, you can't negotiate with a rattlesnake. It's that simple.
No, and you've lost. Just maintaining they have the wherewithal to be able to negotiate, that they have any honorary indications or proclivity to want to negotiate, because they don't. They'll tell you, they'll make it look that way.
Yeah. Let me continue here. Cuellar did not shy away from his party-splitting ways when addressing supporters. He said, quote, I'm a Democrat, but I follow the words of LBJ, who said many years ago, I'm an American, I'm a Texan, and then I'm a Democrat, in that order. If you put the party first before your country, you're doing a disservice. I think what we need to do is make sure that we put our country, our district first, and that's what I do, end of quote. No, you don't, Henry. You don't. Well over 60% of this country believes in a woman's right to choose without restriction, period, end of story. You are not doing the will of your supporters. You are doing your own will, probably because of your religious bullshit. And I'll just call it what it is. They think, oh, God says we can't do this. Is there one instance in the Bible of the word abortion? Zero. None. Better start reading that whole document, folks, not just the little parts you want to cherry pick to go along with your own beliefs.
Read in Genesis, where life begins with the first breath. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, my God. Let me continue here. Cuellar and Cisneros are facing off again after she first ran against him in 2020 and lost by 4 percentage points in a head-to-head primary. This time she forced him to a runoff after a primary that was upended in January when the FBI raided Cuellar's home in Laredo. The FBI has not said what it was investigating, and Cuellar has denied any wrongdoing. So let's see. The House Majority Whip and the Democratic Party are putting their support behind a guy that just had his house raided by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Isn't that lovely? The runoff was relatively low-key until news broke Monday about the Supreme Court's intentions, which set off Democratic leaders vowing to fight back in Congress. But Cisneros and other progressives suggested those were hollow words if leaders continued to stand by Cuellar. Cuellar has the support of not only Clyburn, but also House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and the number 2 House Democrat Majority Leader Steny Hoyer. who we've talked about on this show as well. I believe Steny Hoyer has also been a past recipient of Douchebag of the Week. Their names and others were featured prominently on campaign literature that was handed out at the rally. In her statement, Cisneros said, quote, with the House majority on the line, he could very much be the deciding vote on the future of our reproductive rights, and we cannot afford to take that risk. I hope Democratic Party leadership won't stand in the way of delivering for South Texans, end of quote. They already are. I've got to tell you, they're throwing money behind Henry Cuellar in major amounts of money. So Jessica Cisneros has a big hill to climb in this race. I hope the women go out and vote in droves. Do what's necessary. It's time to stand up. As a matter of fact, there's going to be rallies all across the United States this weekend on Saturday, May 14th. I'm going to be at the one in Grand Rapids at Calder Plaza. Jack, I believe you're going as well?
Yeah.
So, yeah, you folks need to stand up, raise your voice, and say, hell no, we're done taking this. We're going to take over.
I take inspiration from the groups that have gone to the various Supreme Court homes in Washington.
Absolutely.
Taking a lot of gas for that. But you could add Claiborne's address. Roll on down 95, down to South Carolina, the Big Jim's house.
Yep.
Let him have a dose of protest.
Absolutely. That's what you need to do.
Yeah.
The time for wearing gloves and being nice is done and over with. You need to take the gloves off and you need to get dirty. We'll talk about that in a little bit here. Asked about the High Court's leaked opinion after the rally, Cuellar reiterated a statement he issued Tuesday evening. He criticized the draft opinion, saying it is not based on precedent and, quote, not incremental in nature like they should be, end of quote. But he told reporters he is a Catholic and, you know my position, adding that many people in his district believe in, quote, at least some sort of limitation on exception, end of quote. No, you're speaking for your Catholic supporters. You're not speaking for your whole district. I tell you what, I've had my issues with the Catholic Church. The priests there, it's been proved that the priests love to fondle the altar boys. Proved. They've lost lawsuit after lawsuit. They've had to fork over multiple millions of dollars.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's really who you want as your support. You're a moron. Unbelievable. Let me continue. After the rally, attendees said they supported Cuellar, often offering effusive praise and recalling a long relationship with him, but made clear they disagreed with him on abortion. Well, then you don't vote for him. This needs to be a single-issue vote. Joanne Raymond, a 78-year-old party activist who said she has known Cuellar since he served in the State House, flatly said she would disagree with the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade. She said, quote, I have never had an abortion, would never have an abortion. None of my children have had one. Thank God none of my grandchildren. But I don't tell people what to do with their bodies. So no, I'm not pro-abortion. I'm pro-choice, and Henry is not. And that's okay. I'm a Catholic too. Henry and I can agree to disagree. That's the beauty of Henry Cuellar. End of quote. No, that is the problem with this country. I mentioned it on last week's show. The problem with this country begins and ends with we can agree to disagree. Bullshit. That is what has gotten this country to the point that it has. That is why we have had Donald Trump as president. Period. You can quote me on it, folks. Unbelievable. State Representative Barbara Gervin Hawkins of San Antonio, Cuellar endorser who spoke at the rally, also said her views on abortion did not align with Cuellar's, but she said that she understood the belief was grounded in his Catholic faith.
Yeah, see, that right there is as detrimental as the saying, let's agree to disagree. And that is a respect for the cloth, a respect for your faith. Saying to people, well, I disagree, but I really respect your faith. No. Well, where is there any benevolence in somebody that believes in impossible things and they call it faith? Why respect that? The comment should be, you're a human being, but I have no respect for you operating on the basis of faith. The neglect and denial of reason, the repudiation of, in some cases, science, not in some cases, in most cases. Why do we go around saying, well, we respect your faith? I don't respect Catholicism's faith. Why the hell should I? Look at the history of the Catholic Church. The sexual abuse you just mentioned, mix that right in with the dead bodies strewn across North America from the indigenous Indians that the so-called Catholic faith is responsible for. Why should we keep saying we respect people's faith? It should be the opposite.
Jack, we can go all the way back. We've talked about on the show Thomas de Torquemada, the Spanish Inquisition. Look it up.
Unknown to history. You talk about CRT, not knowing American history of racism. Nobody knows about this murder. Nobody knows that Christianity is the bedrock headwaters of the most efficient and gruesome tortures ever invented in the history of the world. Came from the Christian church. Not the mafia, not the Arabian Nights, not the Chinese. No, it came from Christians in North Europe.
Yep.
The most devilish tortures ever. And Torquemada was their MVP.
Absolutely. It's like Carlin says. Do you believe in God? No. Dead. Do you believe in God? Yes. Do you believe in my God? No. Dead. That's how it is.
And you respect that faith. You got to respect that faith, Darren.
You know what I respect? I respect Thomas Jefferson's letter to the Danbury Baptists that said there must be a wall of separation erected between church and state.
Well, I'll go a step farther. That gives them too much identity in my book. When you say you got a wall, you got two sides of the wall, right?
Yeah.
The people in Catalonia, when they overthrew the capitalist government, burnt down every church. They didn't worry about any walls. When a church is gone, when it's a vacant lot, you don't need a wall. I believe in eradication. Let's look John Brown's formula to respect the faith. The harm they've done to the world shouldn't be tolerated.
Absolutely.
It shouldn't be allowed to have one side of the damn wall.
Absolutely. Let me continue the story here. Representative Barbara Gervins-Hawkins said this, quote, I'm pro-choice all the way, okay? But that's one issue. That one issue don't separate me from supporting someone in my party because we can agree to disagree. Here that is again. And I hope we as Texans and we as Americans really start looking at it that way. One issue doesn't stop us from having a relationship. End of quote. You're telling that to the wrong person, the person who got rid of his brother because of his Trump beliefs. And it's only been recently that my middle brother has gotten back into my life after apologizing to my mother. I'm still waiting for an apology, by the way. Let me continue.
Hey, listen, the carcass of ruined families because of Trump the end marriages, literally the ground sake, and no agreement with Trump or saying, well, we respect his viewpoints and his scientific conclusions, his admonitions on COVID. We should respect that. He's a president. No, they should have been identified for what they were. They wouldn't be sitting at a 1 million man death toll today. Absolutely. The end of the progress that we've made as a species has come from the unwillingness to accept conventional beliefs and traditional forms of power. Not accepting them, not wrapping your arms around the Catholic Church, wrapping your arms around the hideous state that Trump gave us. You don't agree with it. You don't say to your neighbor, I see your Trump stickers in the front yard. So, yeah, I respect you. You got a right to believe what you want. No, you don't. You don't have a right to believe lies. You don't have a right to believe policy that hurts people, that kills gays, that has Asians punched in the face, women, and killed, and worse, because of Trump's xenophobia here. You don't respect that. You don't give them the right to say, hey, I respect your viewpoint. Bullshit. It ends up in death, misery. Yeah. And that's been the track of the Catholic Church. That's been the track of religions. And the religions can't accept that. Until you take a hardline stand, I'll tell you what, the military, if you want to get respected in business in Grand Rapids, just put out on your sign, we respect the military. Just put it out there. I remember seeing soldiers coming back in the 60s that were spit on. There was no respect. They were called baby killers.
Yeah.
And the right said, what can we possibly do to get the aurora of respect back? So after billions of tax dollars of propaganda and flyovers at states, we're back to the point where they're unmercifully respected.
Mm-hmm.
And that's ridiculous. What really was manifest in the protest where these soldiers were confronted wasn't the ubiquitous show you get every day at the end of the evening news, which is another return. The guy, catches his wife in the workout club, embraces, has the little girl run across the schoolyard, daddy surprises, get that on, put that, it's endless. It just keeps going and going and going. Because this state knows you've got to have respect for the military. You can't question it. Mm-hmm. Those forms of illogical respect to authority have got us into this mess.
They absolutely have. And let me go one step further. This type of worship of not just the military, but also of law enforcement is what led to a state law being passed in Michigan that cities, townships, local governments can't regulate signs or flags that have anything to do with worshiping the military or the police. You can thank Johnny Brand for that one, who also is a former winner of Douchebag of the Week, as has his brother Tommy, who is a state representative, by the way. I believe Tommy's in the state senate, isn't he? Or he's running for state senate.
Probably, yeah.
Unbelievable. Let me go back to this story here. The rally was part of multiple events that Clyburn did with Cuellar on Wednesday in San Antonio. Earlier in the day, they attended a private gathering with faith leaders on San Antonio's east side, and after the rally, Clyburn was set to headline a fundraiser for Cuellar. Regardless of who wins the runoff, Republicans believe they have a chance to flip the district as they push to make new inroads in South Texas. They are currently in a primary runoff for the seat, though the national GOP has coalesced behind Cassie Garcia, a former staffer for U.S. Senator Ted Cruz. In defending his campaigning for Cuellar, Clyburn nodded at the potential for a competitive general election. And here's what he said, and I'm going to really blow my top at this one. Here's Clyburn. Quote, I would ask anybody, which is more important, to have a pro-life Democrat or to have an anti-abortion Republican? Because come November, that could very well be the choice in this district. End of quote. My response to Clyburn is, what's the difference? What is the difference? There is none.
No. Pepsi and Coke.
Absolutely. Really, it comes down to that. So to Jim Clyburn and Henry Cuellar, we have this message for you.
Don't be a douchebag.
You got that right. Jimmy Clyburn has won this award multiple times. That is somebody that needs to be primaried out of office and sent to the glue factory. Just going to call it like it is. I'm sick of violent conservatives infiltrating the Democratic Party, and Jim Clyburn is a violent conservative. You've heard it here first. You won't hear it anywhere else. Because I tell you what, nobody else has the balls to tell you the truth in radio. We do. I am so pissed, Jack. It is unbelievable how irate I am. I'm really going to have to take some blood pressure pills when I get done.
Save some of that angst for the protest on Saturday, 3 o'clock.
Oh, believe me, I'm going to. And they say, oh, don't engage in the counter-protesters. Who's got my bail money? That's what I'd like to know.
Well, I think they should.
I'm done caring.
I think the crowd should turn its energies or set the crowd size for the protest against the murder here that's being stalled now, the decision to prosecute or not by Chris Becker. How many weeks, how many days? He's purposely stalling. The protest should be ramped up, but time just wears it down. That crowd that's going to be gathered there should be somewhat large. And, I wish that same inertia, but time has just worn down the protest against what was a blatant murder. Absolutely. The guy's getting his money, he's being paid, and who knows when they're going to make an announcement.
Yeah.
When they feel it's safe to stick their head out of the conservative shell, that's when they'll do it.
Can I make a prediction? I predict that they make the announcement real late in the day, the Friday before Memorial Day, because they know that everybody is going to be out of town and going to be partying and whooping it up and grilling on the barbecue and floating down the river, drinking beer, whatnot.
I don't see any challenge to that stall.
I tell you what, Jack, let's go ahead and let's move on. Since we've been talking about abortion, let's go on to this next story. If we get time, let's roll back to Patrick Leolia's murder. But continuing with abortion rights in this country, I have this story. This is Molly Beck writing for the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. This is dated May 8th out of Madison. Madison police are investigating arson after a fire broke out early Sunday in the offices of a prominent anti-abortion group, and a threat was spray-painted on the group's building. The incident took place a week after a leaked draft of the U.S. Supreme Court decision showing a majority of justices plan to vote to overturn the court's landmark 1973 ruling that legalized abortion. If that happens, an 1849 law banning most abortions would go into effect in Wisconsin. "If abortions aren't safe, then you aren't either," was scrawled in black paint across the outside wall of Wisconsin Family Action's offices in Madison, a threat that was found by police while responding to a call early Sunday reporting flames inside the building on the capital city's north side. Wisconsin Family Action President Julaine Appling said in an interview, quote, "To be honest with you, I knew immediately what had happened," end of quote. And I'll tell you why I think she said that in just a couple minutes here. Let's continue the story. Appling said police notified her about 7:45 a.m. while she was at church in Watertown, about 42 miles away. The first call of police reporting flames in Appling's office arrived at around 6 a.m. Investigators wrote in a report on the incident Sunday that a Molotov cocktail which did not ignite was thrown inside the building. It also appears a separate fire was started in response. Madison Police Chief Sean Barnes said in a statement that the department is investigating the fire as arson. Appling said, quote, "You know, you can disagree with me, and I don't mind being disagreed with. But to threaten the safety of my team because we have a different opinion on an issue, an important issue, I'll grant you that. That doesn't give you credence to threaten my life and then turn around and damage property. If somebody had been in that office, I don't think anybody would have been killed, but you would have been hurt just from the flying glass," end of quote. Democratic Governor Tony Evers in a statement condemned the violence against the group. He said in a statement, quote, "We reject violence against any person for disagreeing with another's view. Violence is not the way forward. Hurting others is never the answer. We will work against overturning Roe and attacks on reproductive rights by leading with empathy and compassion," end of quote. Republican U.S. Senator Ron Johnson tweeted, quote, "This attack is abhorrent and should be condemned by all," end of quote. Hey, you're not going to get it on this show. Go look elsewhere. In a statement, Madison Mayor Satya Rhodes Conway said the city, quote, "believes strongly in the right to free speech, but it must be exercised nonviolently by all sides in this increasingly contentious debate," end of quote. The problem is it's not just speech, it's action. We have evil, violent, conservative traitors who are going out and they're passing laws that affect other people directly. That's how it is, folks. It's not just, it's my belief. No, different. Barnes said local police investigators have notified federal authorities about the incident, adding, quote, "Our department has and continues to support people being able to speak freely and openly about their beliefs, but we feel that any acts of violence, including the destruction of property, do not aid in any cause," end of quote. Let me remind everybody once again, destruction of property is not violence. It is not violence.
It wasn't violent in the teeth protest in the Boston Harbor. That was destruction of property. I guess what you have, though, is a balance, really imbalance, I should say. When we have violence performed, whether it's on the Capitol steps on January 6th, which has been termed now as peaceful, just yesterday by Cruz and that band of idiots, saying that the protests outside the homes of Supreme Court people standing in the public street, that's violent, but when you ram a pole down a guard's face, that's not violent. So, you really can't even talk with people. If you're going to negotiate with somebody, you got to have the ability to agree on the language, on the English language. 2 + 2 = 4 over there on that side of the table, and 2 + 2 = 4 on this side of the table. That's not what we have.
No.
So these guys run around saying everybody should be upset by this. You know, if we had a fair and balanced playing field of violence, then that might be appropriate. We don't have that.
No, we don't. Because the pro-fetus movement, pro-forced birth movement, they're violent. They are. They harass women going into abortion clinics. They bomb clinics. They kill doctors. That's what they do.
Yep.
Sorry, they do. Let me continue here. Appling said she hasn't assessed the level of damage to the offices or whether the organization will move to a space with fewer windows. Wisconsin Family Action has for years pushed Wisconsin and federal lawmakers to outlaw abortions. The leaked Supreme Court opinion has heightened the emotions of supporters and opponents of abortion access over the already intensely controversial issue that has spurred violence in the past. In 2016, a Planned Parenthood clinic in Appleton closed after it had been firebombed 4 years earlier and following a deadly attack of a clinic in Colorado. Right there is your violence. But they don't want to talk about that. No. Appling said, quote, I don't live in fear, and I'm not constantly looking over my shoulder. I've had death threats in my house and over other issues. This one surprised me. End of quote. Well, I tell you what, I'm going to go back to one of her earlier statements. When she said, quote, to be honest with you, I knew immediately what had happened. End of quote. I'll just lay it out right here. You want my belief on this? I don't think it was pro-choice people that firebombed that clinic. I think it was pro-lifers that did it, trying to frame the narrative.
And before you get your panties tied in the knot, listeners, go back to Minnesota where they were trying to pin on the left broken windows, fires, etc.
Yeah, absolutely.
The biggest percentage of those were tracked back to false flag. So the conservatives were there to make it look like the left was being violent.
Yes, that was during the George Floyd protests. Exactly. I tell you what, since we've been talking about violent conservatives, Jack, I know you wanted to talk about the new milestone that we have reached in this country over COVID-19. We are now officially at a death toll of over 1 million people. Most of those deaths you can lay right at the orange feet of Donald John Trump.
Most certainly. Denial that even exists, falsification of the testing results, on and on and on. Now, here's the thing. You're talking about violence. Is not the burial mound of 1 million people a testament of violence? Yeah. Is not this information as violent as taking a ball bat to somebody when you get the bottom result of 1 million people? Poverty is violence. Misinformation is violence. The misinformation that Trump has allowed to flood our society has amounted into this total. That's where it came from. And you have to take the moniker violence and place it in what appear to be non-traditional places. Violence is in the idiocy that exuded from Trump out of his mouth daily concerning COVID. Something like they estimated yesterday 280,000 people wouldn't have died without the lies, misinformation, and confusion that was seeded by Donald J. Trump. So you are right when you say it's at his orange feet, only they're bloody feet. They're as violent as a guy. He told his police to go out and, I don't know if you heard this, shoot BLM people in the legs. They were protesting. The day that he marched over with his Bible and walked into the church.
Jeez. Unbelievable.
Oh yeah. So we are suffering violence. The violence that we have in our culture today comes from the leaders like Trump.
Absolutely. It really does. And it's across the entire Republican Party. It really is. There is no sanity in that party anymore, if there even was one to begin with.
No. And you don't hand an idiot like that the crisis of COVID and expect them to treat it any other way. This is a guy that wanted to bomb hurricanes. This is a guy who wanted to send missiles. No, wait a second. He wanted to send missiles into Mexico. He wanted to launch missiles. And there's a book out now by one of his right-hand in-circle, I can't remember the guy's name, just released. My mind, I guess I'm getting old. But all of these quotes are recorded.
Yeah.
And we went through a 10-year of violence with Donald J. Trump that we're still suffering from.
Absolutely. Oh, man. And we might as well just go right into the other topic you wanted to discuss. And this has to do with COVID and supply issues, but it also has to do with a recall and inspections of plants that make baby formula. There's a baby formula shortage in this country. And before people say, well, why don't you just breastfeed them? There are some moms that cannot produce enough milk for their baby. There are some babies that are allergic to their mother's milk. There are babies that need formula for other reasons. You can't just paint with a broad brush and shake. Well, just put them back on breast milk. It doesn't work that way.
Well, I have a question for you. The factory was in Sturgis.
Yes.
Did you not hear that there was an FDA inspection a year ago of the factory? And I don't know what the problem was.
It was some sort of mold contamination or something like that, because they did do a recall of a lot of baby formula.
A year ago?
Within the last year. It hasn't been a year. It's been shorter than that.
Well, I think there was a complaint even that predated the current debacle. My only mentioning of that is that why wouldn't there have been a safeguard initiated then? If and when the event declines or the circumstance declines to the point that you have to close the factory, which they're now saying would take 8 weeks to get food back on the shelves, could there have been some safety measures taken? A reserve, an alternative production, a baby formula, so we wouldn't be in this mess?
Do you know how much reserve there is in this country of baby formula? Zero.
No, I don't.
Zero.
Well, there you go. There you go. If it was precarious, back when they had these complaints, right then and there should have been a formation of some kind of protection, some kind of reserve, some kind of alternative production. And it wasn't.
Yeah.
We're sending bombs. We're dropping bombs out of planes and armament to Ukraine. Justifiably so. There is some debate there, but I understand what they think they're doing. Why can't we get baby formula here? Not from the Ukraine. How about Canada across the friendly border? Would it be that difficult? Just bring some semi-trucks in, baby formula? Yeah, it's a mystery to me, the whole shortage of the formula. There's just some questions I can't put together.
And again, if you think the baby formula shortage is bad now, just wait till these evil, violent, conservative traders get rid of abortion and people are forced to carry you to term.
Yeah.
Then you're really going to have a world of hurt. Is that pro-life? Is that really pro-life? You know my answer. The answer is no.
You know George Carlin's answer.
Yeah. And speaking of violent people that want to take lives, I want to get to this story. This is Zina Al-Tahan writing for Al-Jazeera. This is dated May 11th out of Ramallah occupied West Bank. Israeli forces have shot dead Al Jazeera's journalist Shireen Abu Akleh in the occupied West Bank. That is according to witnesses and the Palestinian Health Ministry. Abu Akleh, a longtime TV correspondent for Al Jazeera Arabic, was killed on Wednesday while covering Israeli army raids in the city of Jenin in the northern occupied West Bank. She was rushed to a hospital in Jenin in critical condition where she was declared dead shortly after at 7:15 a.m. local time, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. Abu Akleh was wearing a press vest and was standing with other journalists when she was killed. Another Al Jazeera journalist, Ali Al-Samoudi, was also wounded by a bullet in the back at the scene. He is now in stable condition. The head of the medicine department at Al-Najah University in Nablus confirmed that Abu Akleh was shot in the head. He said that her body was transferred for an autopsy based on an order from the public prosecution. Abu Akleh's body was carried out of the university coated in a Palestinian flag, after which she will be taken to the Ish-Shari Hospital in Ramallah. An official funeral will be held for her Thursday morning at the Palestinian presidency headquarters in Ramallah. So that happened on Thursday, her funeral. Al-Samoudi and other journalists at the scene said there were no Palestinian fighters present when the journalists were shot. directly disputing an Israeli statement referencing the possibility that it was Palestinian fire. So not only are the Israeli military murdering journalists, they're blaming the Palestinians for it.
Yeah, Darren, the price for truth is, there's never been a higher premium. And we've had journalists like no other time killed globally trying to bring the truth to public attention. Forget NFL quarterbacks being a hero. Forget the NBA or some guy that sniped 45 Iraqis and they made a movie about him. Those aren't heroes. This woman was a hero. Journalists who are flamed for a democracy out there risking their life, and imperial states like Russia and Israel taking those lives. It's incredible that people don't realize, seriously, how the truth is combated. I mean, think of it. Israel hates Al-Jazeera. Al-Jazeera holds them responsible with accurate journalism. And the price it took, they blew her face off. They blew the woman's face off because she has exposed an imperialist state called Israel. That's the bottom line. Forget all the excuses, crossfire. I don't know how she was shot. Maybe it was Palestinians. Maybe it was aliens. No. Add up where usually violence comes from, the state protecting itself, Israel trying to stop journalism.
Absolutely. Al-Samudi said, quote, "We were going to film the Israeli army operation and suddenly they shot us without asking us to leave or stop filming. The first bullet hit me and the second bullet hit Shireen. There was no Palestinian military resistance at all at the scene." End of quote.
Yep.
Shata Hanayasa, a local journalist who was standing next to Abu Akleh when she was shot, also told Al Jazeera that there had been no confrontations between Palestinian fighters and the Israeli army. She said the group of journalists had been directly targeted. She said, quote, "We were 4 journalists. We were all wearing vests, all wearing helmets. The occupation army did not stop firing even after she collapsed. I couldn't even extend my arm to pull her because of the shots being fired. The army was adamant on shooting to kill." End of quote. Gee, sounds like our police departments here in this country.
Yeah. But they'll obfuscate and twist and turn and just, deaden the reality of what they did.
Again, just like the police departments in this country do.
Tried and true formula.
Yep. The details of Abu Akleh's killing are still emerging, but videos of the incident show that she was shot in the head. That's according to Al Jazeera's Nida Ibrahim. Ibrahim, speaking from the Palestinian city of Ramallah, said, quote, "What we know for now is that the Palestinian Health Ministry has announced her death. Shireen Abu Akleh was covering the events unfolding in Jenin, specifically an Israeli raid on the city, which is north of the occupied West Bank, when she was hit by a bullet to the head." End of quote. In her last email to the network, Abu Akleh sent a message to Al Jazeera's Ramallah bureau at 6:13 a.m., which is an hour before she was declared dead by the Palestinian Health Ministry. She wrote, quote, "Occupation forces stormed Jenin and besiege a house in the Jabriyat neighborhood. On the way there, I will bring you news as soon as the picture becomes clear." End of quote.
Yeah.
Separately, on Wednesday in the occupied West Bank, the Palestinian Health Ministry said an 18-year-old Palestinian was shot dead by Israeli forces in the town of Al-Bireh, near the illegal settlement of Sego. Abu Akleh, who was a dual Palestinian-American national, was one of Al Jazeera's first field correspondents, joining the network in 1997. Grief and sorrow filled the Al Jazeera offices in downtown Ramallah as the news quickly spread, and dozens of colleagues, fellow journalists, friends, and Palestinian figures poured in, including Palestinian politicians Hanan Ashrawi and Khalida Jarrar.
Well, you can drive into any town in America and you'll see statues of soldiers in the downtown square. And drive around. See if you can find a statue anywhere to a journalist. Seriously, drive around. There are none. Just like there were no monuments or museums with the murdered slaves for 400 years. They finally pulled one up in Washington because they had to pressure. You don't see the kind of honor that should be attributed. This woman's name would be gone in 3 or 4 days. And her life was a sacrifice for the truth.
Unfortunately, I feel you're correct on that, Jack. We just tell it like it is here.
Yeah. We get it all screwed up. We have it all screwed up. Fox News just gave Brady an athletic hero. What was it, $375 million, more money than he's ever made playing football, and he's a top player maybe in history.
Let me clarify that as Fox Sports, not Fox Propaganda Channel that
Fox
gave him the
Sports.
money. Yes.
Okay, right.
To be a
but
commentator after he finally decides he's done throwing footballs.
But he's immortal. He's a GOAT. He's the GOAT quarterback for all time. Every kid has his name on the lips. Who's the GOAT journalist, by the way?
Walter Cronkite.
All right, hey, I can go along with that. But probably 8/10 of the population doesn't even know who the hell Walter Cronkite is or was.
Yeah.
You don't see any statues for journalists or union leaders. How about Walter Reuther right here in Detroit?
Yeah.
Had assassination attempt right to his living room window, him and his wife, was shot and his arm was ruined for the rest of his life. Then they murdered him by screwing up his altimeter. That was proven. That's not conjecture. There's no monument for Reuther. There is a highway named after him, but nobody knows who the hell he is. Reuther Highway, who's that?
Yeah.
Did he play for the Lions?
Exactly, pretty much. I tell you what, if there is a journalist that needs a statue, I'll name two of them, and they both worked for CBS. Walter Cronkite, Edward R. Murrow. Without Murrow, we wouldn't have investigative journalism.
Yeah.
My professional opinion. Jack, let's go ahead and let's move on to our off-the-cuff segment for this week. Let's kind of lighten the mood. Although this first story isn't very light, but it is full of karma. This is Sophia Ankel writing for Business Insider. This is dated May 11th. A man died from a cardiac arrest while he was burying the body of a woman he had strangled in his backyard. That's according to South Carolina police officials. Edgefield County Sheriff Jody Rowland and County Coroner David Burnett said in a joint statement Tuesday that deputies were sent to a residence on Tanglewood Drive in Trenton, South Carolina on May 7th after reports of an unresponsive male lying in his yard. That statement was first published by WJBF Television. Upon their arrival, the officials found the body of 60-year-old Joseph McKinnon, who appeared to have died of natural causes. The deputies also found another body close by that was wrapped in a plastic bag and lying in a freshly dug pit. That body was identified as McKinnon's girlfriend, 65-year-old Patricia Dent. She lived with him in the residence up until the point that he strangled her. Autopsy results released Monday found McKinnon died of a cardiac arrest while Dent died by strangulation.
Wow.
The joint statement from the county sheriff and the coroner read like this. Evidence gathered at the scene along with statements from witnesses aided investigators to build a timeline, leading us to believe that McKinnon attacked Dent while inside their home. McKinnon then bound her and wrapped her in trash bags before putting her in the previously dug pit. The pit was then partially filled in by McKinnon. While covering the pit, McKinnon had the cardiac event causing his death. Oh, my God. That's karma right there for you.
Yeah, you know, you got to pace yourself in those murders. You just can't.
Don't exert yourself too much, right?
South Carolina, Florida, what's the difference?
Pretty much.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, God. And actually, our final off-the-cuff story comes from Tennessee, but this one's a real happy one here, but yet bizarre. This is Madeline List writing for the Sacramento Bee. This is dated May 9th. Just as the sun was rising on Sunday, May 1st, Julie Thornton Johnson's husband alerted her to the presence of a dog in their bed. This wasn't surprising news for Johnson, who has 3 dogs with her husband in their home in Oswego, Tennessee, about 180 miles southeast of Nashville. I hope I'm pronouncing that town right. Ocoee. The surprise came when the couple took a closer look at the animal sleeping peacefully between them. She told McClatchy News, quote, "We both kind of rolled over and looked at each other, and there's a 90-pound dog in bed in between us that doesn't belong to us." End of quote.
Yeah, what's that song? If you can't love the one that's dear, love the one that's near. So the dog.
It's if you can't be with the one you love, then love the one you're with.
There you go.
Yep.
That works.
Oh, gosh. At first, Johnson says she felt concerned. She thought at the time, quote, "Should we be scared? What else is in the house?" End of quote. But the dog, a 5-year-old pit bull Labrador mix, didn't seem threatening. Johnson said, quote, my husband just moved the blankets a little bit and she just snuggled right into him like she belonged to him. End of quote. Johnson said she didn't know who the dog's owner was or how it had gotten into their house and passed the couple's 3 dogs who usually bark at anything that comes up their driveway. So she posted photos of the dog on Facebook looking snug and content in her bed. She wrote, quote, this is the weirdest post I have ever had to make. Is this your dog? End of quote.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Meanwhile, about a mile and a half away, Felicia Johnson was pulling up to her parents' house. By the way, Felicia Johnson and Julie Johnson are not related. Felicia Johnson's parents had been taking care of her and her girlfriend's dog, Nayla, and told them that she had slipped out of her collar while on a walk in the yard the previous night. While wondering where her dog might have gone, Felicia Johnson said she received a message of a post on Facebook showing a picture of a dog who looked like Nayla snuggled up in a stranger's bed. She told McClatchy News, quote, I was like, oh my gosh, how did she get in their house? I immediately started responding to Julie, hey, that's my dog. Where are you located? End of quote. After the women communicated and confirmed the dog was Nayla, Felicia Johnson drove to Julie Johnson's house to pick her up. But there was still one problem. Julie Johnson said, quote, when she came to get the dog, Nayla wouldn't get out of bed. End of quote. Felicia Johnson said she had to do a little coaxing to get her pet back. Felicia said, quote, I was like, Nayla, what are you doing? And she just kind of starts tapping her tail like, uh-oh, end of quote. Does Chico do that when he knows he's in trouble?
Oh, yeah, and he'd have no trouble jumping in somebody else's bed. You know, he's a love dog. But I give him credit for not hurting the dog, you know. And
yeah.
We all should have that kind of open arms, right?
Yes, absolutely. After Nayla was finally back at her rightful home, everyone involved said they were glad the story had a happy ending and helped introduce them to new friends. Julie Johnson said, quote, we're going to try to plan a puppy play date with their dogs and ours, end of quote. But no one could believe how far their story had spread. Friends and family members have contacted Julie Johnson as well as Felicia Johnson and her girlfriend, Chris Hawkins, to say that they've seen their story on news sites across the U.S. and abroad. Julie Johnson said, quote, we have a really simple life and we're kind of blown away that this story has made it this far, end of quote. The story with its happy ending and plenty of humor is just what people need right now, Felicia Johnson said, adding, quote, there's so much negativity going on, this is just kind of like a soft spot for people. It's a good laugh. That's what a lot of people need right now is a mental break from everything going on, end of quote. Hey, I can't disagree with her there.
Yeah, that's a touching story. I like that.
Yeah.
90-pound dog. It's a big dog.
Yeah. Chico wouldn't be afraid of him, though, would he?
No, that's a fight.
I've seen Chico go after big dogs.
Especially when he catches them in his bed.
Oh, my gosh. Well, Jack, we are out of time for this week. We'll be back next week. I'm Darren Gibson.
I am Jack Prince.
Please support independent media, the First Amendment, and a woman's right to choose.
The stations that carry Southpaws do not necessarily share the opinions expressed on the show. Southpaws is protected by the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and is copyrighted by Big D Entertainment. All rights reserved.